Freud, kind of had a hydraulic model of a human being. He slightly confused human beings and steam engines. It's a little bit of a problem, right, in his theory. But he basically said kind of, any repressed sexuality where there's a kind of the lids on, right, it's going to kind of explode. But if you can get the system functioning healthily, right, you'll create a healthy person. And David Reisman writes, sex is the final frontier, but we've crossed it, and found it wanting. Right? In other words, hasn't satisfied us. Right? There's about 1,000 new techniques that no one could have ever thought of, but satisfaction, right, bliss, right, love that emerges from it, right, aren't yet there, and we're not sure. So we're in this place in between. We're in this place in between. Not necessarily individuals. Couples may have worked it out, but as a culture, right, it finds our way. We're confused. So there's the libertines, there's the moralists, and there's the cherubs. So the cherubs offer a vision here, and that's why it's such an important vision. It's such an important vision now. You remember what was it? Yeats wrote that famous line, right? The best lack all passion, or something like the best lack all conviction, and the worst are filled with passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Right? The best lack all conviction. The worst are filled with passion intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. In other words, what emerges in this kind of situation is either kind of free-for-all, where sexuality is completely neutralized, and it's considered, it's lost its sacredness, which we intuitively feel is off, right? Or we kind of have a fundamentalist position, which kind of fills the void and brings us back to where we were trying to get away from. So we're not sure. We're not sure how to move in this. So I want to kind of touch for a second, and this is really where we wanted to get, just to touch the cherubs. What did the cherubs sing? And here, if I can just ask you with grace and blessing and love, just for 15 minutes now, kind of just step inside. 15 minutes and we'll close it down there. Okay, and we'll open it up for questions, comments, thoughts, discussion. But here's where I want to kind of just get to the essence of what this thing is about. So the fall of the temple is the fall of Eros, right? The Shekhinah dwells between the two cherubs. The Shekhinah, the feminine goddess divine, dwells between the two cherubs. The sexually intertwisted cherubs. The fall of the temple is not a historical event. It's an event that takes place in the human heart. It's an event that takes place in human consciousness. The fall of the temple is the fall of Eros. It's the exile of the Shekhinah. Shekhinah equals flow, equals Eros, equals being on the inside, equals fullness of presence, equals participating in the yearning force of being, right? Equals the experience of wholeness. So the exile of the Shekhinah is the exile of Eros. You with me? That makes sense so far? With me? Whenever you try and kind of create a transmission, you've got to weave a field of language. We're in the same language together. So when I say now the exile of the Shekhinah is the exile of the erotic, that makes those words now resonate. We're together. So here's the question. So where's the erotic exile to? Well, if the exile of the Shekhinah, if it's the exile of the Eros, where's Eros exile to? Where does it go? New Jersey? I mean, where do you go when you're exiled? Right? Where does it go? It goes to the sexual. It goes to the sexual. It's the exile of the erotic into the sexual. The exile of the erotic to the sexual means that the place that we're able to access an erotic experience is the sexual. But that leads to the collapse of the sexual. Because what do we want the sexual to do for us? To fulfill our erotic needs. But there's no possible way that the sexual can fulfill our erotic needs. Because our need for Eros is the need to be in the flow. It's the need to be on the inside. To be with fullness of presence. To participate in the yearning force of being. To experience wholeness. Right? Sex on a good day can fulfill our sexual needs. Sometimes it can break open into Eros. But it can't fulfill our erotic needs. Can't. No possibility. So the exile of the erotic, meaning the image of the fall of the temple, the destruction of the Holy of Holies, is when the sexual, right, becomes the place where we find Eros. The exile of the erotic is the exile of the erotic into the sexual, which causes the collapse of sexuality because, as Diane said earlier from the Tibetan, right, beautiful phrase, you can't transfer the load of an ox to a cow. Right? It's the exact same thing. And when you ask sexuality to fulfill the needs of Eros, sexuality has to collapse. Because we're asking it to do something that it can't possibly do, which now opens up the core malaise in our culture. And we're actually not aware that it's happening. Because we're asking sexuality to do something that there's no possible way it can do. Now, Does that mean there's no relation between sexuality and eros? Of course not. There's a profound relationship, which is why there are sexually intertwisted cherubs atop the Ark in the Holy of Holies. What is the relationship? And here's the koan. And here's the whole thing. The sexual models the erotic. It doesn't exhaust the erotic. The sexual models the erotic. It doesn't exhaust the erotic. Meaning, sexuality at its best models eros. Tantra, to expand, is to expand the experience of eros beyond the sexual to every facet of living. So for example, where's the area at which giving and receiving merge into one? Sexual. Clearly, to be a great lover, you can't just give or you can't just receive. You have to be both a giver and a receiver, and at some point, the two merge into one. Like, the sexual models the erotic. It models the possibility of a world in which giving and receiving, experienced in an enlightened place, are actually experienced as one. Interiority. Interiority doesn't mean physical interiority, to be inside of each other. It means the experience of stepping into the inside through the sexual models interiority, right, for all other areas of non-sexual living. Right? Participating in yearning, that urge to merge, right, models, right, that sense of being part of a larger whole, right, in all areas of living. Fullness of presence, right, in sexuality, which is gorgeous, models fullness of presence in all other facets of being. So the sexual becomes not that which needs to be controlled, although of course it needs to be controlled, because it's such a powerful, dangerous force. Of course it needs boundaries. But our core relationship to the sexual is, step one, a level of control, of course, a given, container, containment and container. That's an absolute given. I want to make that very, very clear. But I'm not, kind of teaching a kind of system which is kind of, let's break all the boundaries. Right? It's not as it's been misunderstood, right, at different times when I've taught this and not made this clear enough. Right? This is a container. But within that container, that's only step one. Right? Containment's step one. Right? In other words, think about it for a second. And just think about it. What occupies everybody's attention, time, right, focus, more than any other single thing on the planet? Sexuality. So there's two possibilities. Either the divine force that animates the universe is a schmuck. A sinister, sadistic, vicious old man someplace who's saying, you know what? It's never going to satisfy you. You're always going to think that somebody else is getting it and you're not. Somebody else is happy and you're not. Someone's not working for you. I just set up the universe this way to make you suffer. Read Schopenhauer, by the way. It's about what he says in a couple of paragraphs. That's why he wasn't feeling good, other than the fact that Hegel was getting more people to his lectures. That was kind of a problem. Okay? Right? Or, right, actually the inner force of being is not emptiness, but emptiness, as Suzuki wrote, Suzuki read Shunyata, infused with love. Right? Emptiness infused with love. And the core of that love is, I'm going to actually give you, in the center of your life, a spiritual mastery. And that spiritual mastery is called sexuality. And sexuality is actually going to teach you everything that you need to know about living in eros in all the non-sexual arenas of life. A few examples, right? Okay, well, living on the inside, yearning force of being, fullness of presence, giving and receiving are one. Well, let's keep going. Giving by itself, right? Sexuality is about giving, right? Accessing imagination and fantasy, right? Time, shifting time, the masculine and the feminine merging, giving up control, right? Union, right? And how we live in pain and how we deal with pain. Actually, every major facet of living, right, is modeled, right, in sexuality gorgeously, right? The exile of the Shekhinah, the exile of the erotic, is when I only access those frames of living in one limited area of living called the sexual. But when the sexual becomes tantrized, expanded, and it becomes a teacher and a model for how I live in every non-sexual facet of living, then we're beginning to have a conversation. Now look what happens. Look what happens. Not only is the exile of the erotic into the sexual, you with me? But there's an exile within an exile. Meaning, even within the sexual, we get to a place where we can only access an experience of eros through boundary-breaking sexuality. Stolen waters are sweet. That's how we began, right? And that's what happens is, sexuality in its classical forms, right, no longer provides the erotic experience because we're so detached from eros. That's what it means when we say the temple has fallen. We've lost. That's what the Templars were about. The Templars, the Masonic lodges were about re-accessing that. You know, in a Masonic lodge, the door would open from the inside, and often the handle of the drawer was a heart.